Hello everyone and welcome to the 1000 subscriber Q&A. You guys sent me a bunch of questions, so let's just get into it, I think. First question. Are you from Germany? I noticed your German sounds pretty flawless. Yes, I'm German, but I also lived in the US for some time, so my accent might be a bit off when speaking English. Next one. How do you think the rise of fascism intersects with capitalism? Most socialists tend to say fascism is capitalism in decay. But I see fascism as a reaction towards the destabilizing effects capitalism has on the traditional norms and values of a society. Well, I guess this really depends on what societal problems you attribute to capitalism. If you look at Europe, most countries are doing economically good, but there's still a big shift towards the right, and authoritarianism in the case of Poland, for instance. In that case, it depends where you see the root cause for the refugee crisis and the gap between certain Eastern European countries and Western European countries. Now, I agree that if there was more economic uncertainty in Europe, the shift would probably be even more extreme, and in that sense, capitalism seems to be a factor in the failing of democracy. I don't agree that it's the main reason though. It's just part of the mix, I think. And besides that, there is no guarantee that there wouldn't be economic uncertainty in a non-capitalist society. Next one. Are you ethically Jewish? I assume this was supposed to mean ethnically Jewish, but no, I'm not ethnically Jewish or religiously Jewish. In fact, both parts of my family were directly involved in the Nazi machinery in numerous ways. Maybe I'll do a video about that in some time. This isn't the first time I got this question, Joe, so if you're looking for a reason to blame my motivation on, if it's not that I'm Jewish, with what I just said, I'm sure some will blame me making my videos on feeling guilty or whatever. I'm also sure there will always be a reason for a certain group of people to not engage with the arguments. By far the most questions I got were on my personal political alignment. If you haven't guessed already, I'm on the left of most issues. To be a bit more specific, I would have to know where you're asking this question from. In Germany, I would be considered a social democrat, in the UK I would probably vote Labour, and so on. Next one. My question is if you plan on continuing to dissect and rebuke the different arguments of alt-righters, or are you going to focus more on World War II-ish type material? When I say this, I mean talking about things like the Holocaust rather than addressing Nazi propaganda about the war. And I was also wondering if you would ever consider a video that isn't a response, but it's more centered around an idea that you want to explore. ContraPoints does this in her videos quite often. It's gonna be a mix of both eventually. The reason why a lot of my videos until now are centered around World War II history is because it's a time period that still gets heavily politicized in modern discourse. But I will branch out a bit more in the future, I think. One video I'm currently working on, for instance, is the identitarian movement in Europe. But if there are certain topics you want to see covered, feel free to let me know any way you can. Do you hate the idea of non-violently pursuing pro-white policies, say stopping immigration, for example? To tell you if I hate that idea, I would first need to know what that idea actually is. When you say stopping immigration, the context of that question leads me to believe you want to stop non-white immigration, which I don't really see the point of. For instance, if I talk to a random Turkish person whose family came here to Germany in the 80s, I would probably have a lot more in common with him politically than with any white libertarian from the US. The skin color does not determine how well a person fits into a society and how much he or she can contribute. If you want to pursue your pro-white policies, like for instance raising money for all ethno-nationalists to move to an empty island and declare the ethno-state, I would have nothing against that. It's that pro-white policies brought forth are usually centered around the exclusion of other ethnic groups. Next one. Maybe like the smallest thing to worry about, but this always comes up when people engage with alt-right neo-Nazi types, is about if you are giving them a platform. If your channel should get bigger, I'm curious how do you plan on dealing with that? I mean, I'm of the opinion that having videos like yours debunking do more good than any theoretical harm of maybe exposing people to these alt-right ideas. Yeah, I agree with that last sentence. I hope so at least. And I thought about this a lot, especially prior to my video debunking some Holocaust denial talking points. If this channel grows larger, the focus of these types of videos will probably shift more to explaining how Holocaust deniers work, or why I always use the term denier and never the word revisionist, for instance. But it really depends though. As long as I'm able to talk about channels that engage in Holocaust denial who have more reach than I have, I don't really see the problem with it. Hi Daniel, just wanted to ask a few questions for the Q&A video. Do you have a favorite football soccer team? If so, which one? Sorry to disappoint you, but I really don't have a favorite soccer team and usually don't care much for it outside of the World or Euro Cup. Do you plan on expanding the scope of your videos to address other YouTubers, maybe a response video or something along those lines? Yeah, I actually have a ton of those in the works. Do you have any books that you particularly enjoy? Non-fiction or fiction is fine. My favorite fiction book, although it's kind of a mix between fiction and non-fiction, is All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Maria Remarque, which you should definitely read if you haven't. Regarding non-fiction, I don't really have a favorite, but I just finished a book called The Villa, The Lake, The Meeting, Wannsee and the Final Solution by historian Mark Roseman, which was really interesting. It focuses on the ramp up to the decision to exterminate the Jewish population of Europe and the decision makers involved. It's a short read, so if you're interested in that sort of stuff, I would recommend it. Favorite films or genre of music? My favorite movies are Chinatown and Reservoir Dogs. Regarding music, I don't really have a favorite genre or anything. Do you have a topic in mind for a future video? Yeah, a ton actually, like I just said. I will do one on Ben Shapiro, I will do one about the movie Dunkirk and the outcry it produced when it came out, and also a bunch of other stuff. When can we expect the next video? Hopefully next Friday. I also got a lot of questions regarding this logo and what it means or why I use it. When starting out, this logo was more meant as a placeholder until I would find something else, but now the channel grew so rapidly that I just decided to keep it. Like a bunch of you already figured out, the 3 arrows used to be the symbol of the Iron Front, which was a paramilitary organization in Weimar Germany, and positioned themselves as opposition to any forces trying to overthrow the Democratic Republic. What the 3 arrows mean is interpreted differently by several people, but how I see it was that the 3 arrows were meant to strike the 3 enemies of the Weimar democracy, meaning fascists in the face of the NSDAP, communists as the KPD were, and reactionaries, so mostly monarchists trying to bring back the Kaiser as the head of state. The movement was largely centered around the SPD, meaning the Social Democrats, who were far from centrist by modern standards by the way, and it didn't really accomplish much until it was banned as soon as the Nazis took over completely. As for my use of it, it's not that I'm such a big fan of the SPD in the 20s and 30s, they weren't really the good guys either in a lot of cases. It's just that I'm a fan of history and like the idea of people coming together to fight for a young democracy against the forces who were trying to destroy it, and I wish they had succeeded. The logo is really great to cross out other symbols by certain YouTubers or the alt-right, so it's really handy for me. Do you read a lot of books, articles or other forms of time-consuming political development? Do you also have a job? What about hobbies or maybe even exercise? How do you balance your political development with your work and your video production? The town I currently live in has a really great library, so I always have access to a lot of history books and the source material I need. Of course, doing the research and working on the videos is time consuming, but at my main job I have very flexible working hours, so I don't have to sacrifice any part of my private life to do these videos. As of right now, I don't do much on politics in regards to policy, so most of the time goes into reading history books or articles online. Can we expect a video talking about the economy of Nazi Germany and the Weimar Republic? Yes and no. I'm currently working on a response video to another YouTuber which heavily focuses on the Weimar Republic and the causes for the Nazis to take over. It isn't only focused on the economy though. Regarding Nazi Germany, I thought about making a video about the whole Nazis were socialist thing, but that has been debunked already, so if you would still want to see it, just let me know. Okay, last question for today. What are your thoughts on Antifa and anti-fascist violence in general? I'm kind of conflicted on Antifa for a number of reasons. I'm thankful for the work that Antifa is doing in not only non-violently stopping neo-Nazi marches here in Germany, but also the work they do in distributing information about what leads people to become right-wing extremists and helping people to get out if they want. I'm not in favor of preemptive violence though. And the biggest problem I have with the whole Antifa movement is that sometimes it's really hard to separate genuine non-violent anti-fascist efforts from a bunch of stuff I don't agree with. What I mean by that is, where do Antifa's actions end and the Black Bloc just destroying random property begin? Where does Antifa end and the anti-Germans begin? That's why I can't make a broad statement on them, because it depends on the actions they're involved in. Maybe I have to educate myself on them a bit more, I guess. Would you ever do a video debunking the alternative hypothesis? How do you think alt-righters like him, who shatter their views under a mountain of statistical data, should be dealt with? I'm currently thinking about doing a response to one of his videos, not the race realism stuff though. Regarding their mountain of statistical data, it just takes more time to debunk them. But once you've proven their actions to be ideologically motivated, the work is done, I think. A good example of this is the trial between Deborah Lipstadt and Holocaust denier David Irving, where the defendants actually had to showcase how Irving was just stating the things he was stating because he's a lying anti-Semite, and they actually won the case, so maybe look at that if you're interested. What are your thoughts about the tendency of liberals, communists and fascists to frame the other two as the same thing? Are they ever right? That seems to be a byproduct of the much more partisan thinking in American politics. Each side wants to show that the other side is worth of condemnation by slapping a label on them, which aren't accurate most of the time. I do think it's appropriate to showcase how the goals of certain movements are similar, like overthrowing democracy, for instance. What are your thoughts on the neo-scientific racism of the alt-right? Yeah, it's just a scam to make people believe they are the rational and scientific ones, when in reality their views just stem from a place of bigotry. It's reductive reasoning taken to the extreme. But it's also nothing new. If you want to see how this stuff actually manifested in reality, you can read a bit about the year-long propaganda and misinformation campaigns of the Nazis to get the average population on board with their anti-Jewish policies, and ultimately the extermination of races deemed inferior. Okay, that's it for today, and thank you very much to everyone sending me their questions. If you didn't get an answer in this video, I will probably respond to you on Curious Cat, and this also isn't hopefully the last Q&A. In the meantime, you can continue to post your questions if you like, and I'll respond when I get around to it. I'm happy you guys are so eager to interact, and I can't thank you enough for helping me to grow this channel. And with that, I hope all of you have a great weekend. Have a good one.